Hail and Wyatt friends, I'm Railchair, and today we are back with another episode of the March of the Black and Gold Lance. This is our 2-day medieval hand-carting and backpacking expedition where we reenact the movement of a knightly lance through rough terrain. In this episode we are focusing on the camp that we made and the food that we ate while we were there, as well as all our goings-on and different interesting things we did at camp. So as I mentioned in the last video, we had a very arduous journey, and if you want to check that video out in detail, go ahead and check it out. But you can see how rocky this terrain was, and it was quite difficult to get the cart moved over there. But once we had got there, we were camped at a beautiful lake with a year-round supply of water, and it was gorgeous, and it really made the hike worth it. Of course, we started our fire with medieval flint and steel, using jute twine as my tinder bundle and some char cloth, and then everything else we found was natural materials that we had scavenged at the campsite. The weather was perfect, so everything was just dry enough to work, and there wasn't a huge abundance of firewood, but we weren't suffering for it either.
From the foreseeable position, haven't scouted past.
And then we started getting we arrived at like 5:30 to our campsite, so we had definitely a couple hours of sunlight, but we had to be wise with those. So the first parties were getting a fire going and starting cooking, because the food would take about an hour to cook, and then to set up the tent. So this is literally what you're seeing here is basically we had first got to camp, and this is the first thing we're doing. We had parked the hand cart about maybe a quarter mile or maybe an eighth of a mile away, just because it couldn't cross the lake with us, even though there's this beautiful, nice flat rock that was connecting these two parts of the lake. We just didn't want to take the cart over it, so we just used some of our cots as stretchers and just hauled all our goods to the campsite from there. Well, folks, we made it to camp. The trail was a lot rockier and a lot more cart carrying than cart rolling than we expected, but we made it. We'll sit and eat our supper and get our tent set up. We still got a little bit of daylight left, and we are pressing on. We're all very sore and tired, but what's a little bit of soreness and tiredness to a man-at-arms? And then we began cooking our food, getting everything ready. We unpacking everything. There's everything wrapped in linen and waxed linen, so it's a good food preservative. It's antibacterial. It's waterproof, or at least water resistant. And we also have little cloth bags with our flour and our oatmeal and our split peas. Okay, so for supper tonight, what are we having, Emily?
Peas pottage with carrots and onions.
We got some bannock bread too. And we'll sit by this fire a little bit, relax, get hydrated again, get some food in our bellies. The tent still hasn't gone up yet, so we'll have to figure that out.
Got my stale bread.
Oh. We have in our rations, we've got individual rations with some stale bread, some cheese, some apples, pears, sausages. Just enough to keep us going, but not enough to really hit home. And then we start preparing our bannock bread. We've got here 2 parts flour, 1 part butter, and 1 part oats recipe. Also with some salt added. And this would just be fried on a frying pan or even a stone. This is a recipe I've used for a long time, but it does date back to the Middle Ages. Of course, there's such thing as the Battle of Bannockburn, which was named after this type of bread, which is a very popular Scottish, especially Scottish food, because it was so hearty and it was so easy and cheap. And the oats included in it were like the staple carbohydrate of the Highlands. But it was equally found throughout Europe as just a simple
so our recipe
meat or
is just
pan
1
fried
part
bread.
butter, 1 part oats, and
2 parts flour, so it's pretty simple.
A lot of butter.
Is that right?
It's good.
Yep. There's a lot of butter.
Then we just melt the butter in the frying pan, mix it in, and add enough water so that it's, behaves like bread dough and not like water, or not like really dry oatmeal, right? Then here's our stew, which was the peas and the carrots. Just cooking that enough that the peas basically turned to mush. So it took a while for sure, and kept having to add water to it as it would dry out. But it's pretty simple. You just fry these bandits, and each of these was enough to feed 2 people.
It lasts long because nobody wants to eat it.
They're very good, and you can use all sorts of different things. You don't need to use butter. You could use beef tallow or suet. You could use olive oil. You could use any sort of oil or fat, basically. You could use vegetable oils of various kinds. You can see it became a little bit crumbly because we didn't add enough butter. We brought enough, but we didn't add enough. But once night fell, we all gathered around our fire. We ate our food, and then some of us were about to retire to bed. However, we had a interesting objective during the night. One of our company needed to be escorted across the lake, and this is about 10 or 11 at night. So my sergeant and I, we armor up. We begin donning our kit for a night raid, and our archer is with us. She is gearing up as well. We are us 3 going on a night raid across the lake. It ended up being very exciting. One of my favorite parts of the night was this middle of the night, basically, stroll across the lake. We figured that all these bandits and brigands would be out more often at night, or maybe we'd be able to see the light of their fires, especially from across the lake. So since we were hiking around the lake, the moon illuminated the waters of the lake and made everything very visible. And we took a torch, and that basically gave us such visibility. Of course, the bandits could see us. So once we hiked a certain distance out of the woods and in towards the lake, where the moonlight would illuminate, we put the torch out. But we just began the process of armoring now, and our archer will have to accompany us. The 3 basically more military focused kits of us. Also, we took the opportunity to dispose of our armor at said location, and it was carted back to us in the future. So we didn't have to take it on day 2, which we were very happy about. We didn't end up taking the same route back as well, so this ended up being a similar location scouting for us. But we were kind of scouting locations for the next day's egress route, if you will. But you can see there I've got a little torch. It's just some oil on a cloth with some wire wrapped around it. But here Brian and I are in full armor. Our archer is not in shot, but she's coming with us, of course. It's time for a night raid. Let's go. And with that, we headed off into the night, just the 3 of us, in search of any sort of bandits who may be on the trail. And of course, by the morning we had not seen any bandits. We came back early in the morning and got some sleep, so it wasn't too long of a night. But everyone slept reasonable, I believe, and I think that was just because of how exhausted we were, of course. We started our breakfast, got some sausage and some oatmeal going, which was much well deserved, and to me the breakfast was more appetizing than the supper of the night before. But you can see there's what happens when I don't
behind
want
which
to
our
have a bad head.
petroleum-based
But here's
containers are.
cooking our sausage. And even like the bugs and the wildlife didn't bother us all. We barely saw any wildlife or insects, honestly. This was in late September in Oklahoma, so it was still like hot, but it was past the peak for insect season because it was drier. So that we were much happy about that. We had originally thought of maybe doing a all-night watch just have like a watch order set up throughout the night. And that was our original intention, but because of the arduousness of the journey and the general morale at the end of the night, it was just Brian and I and Kaylin who had actually stayed up for first watch, and then the second and third watch we just let people sleep during it. But a bandit had been following us this whole time, which we had evidence of. And he made himself known to us after breakfast at our camp. He most likely smelled the food.
Give me your money or your life!
Here we were, Mike and I, battling this brigand across the lake.
Ask him for help!
This brigand was no doubt in league with another who we had seen the day before. And this brigand of yesterday, we had encountered him once. And so if you would like to see his journey and his stalking us, I will send a link in the description where you can find the life of the medieval outlaw from Llwyd of Historical Outdoors. An excellent video series, and we feature in part 4. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and follow that link down in the description.
I'm gonna try to make it to the landing. I'm gonna leave Ryan's car at the bottom of the hill and goes to the landing.
But here we are, after we are packing everything up, getting ready and making a plan for the morning. So we split up at this point again. Brian and Nathan hauled some stuff to get vehicles in the morning so we could plan our egress route. We only hiked about 1.5 miles out rather than hiking the 2.5 we hiked in, so it was a much more efficient way. And the route on the second day was much simpler and much smoother, so we were much happier for that. But the rest of us, as they had already left, we sallied forth and began loading the cart.
Yeah.
And once the cart was loaded, we headed off towards our final destination. This is the same route we took last night, except this time it's much more visible. Here I am pulling the cart. Like I said, my armor had been ditched at that egress location, so we were okay. I was able to pull the cart. If I was in armor, obviously I wouldn't be able to pull the cart. And my squire was still carrying both my bedrolls. And with that, we rode off, ready to end our day, get back into the 21st century, and get some much-deserved food and rest. Thanks for watching.